I'm not quite sure what the controversy is. But let's lay out what Nerdrotic thinks is the problem versus what is the problem.
Muriel, right? Muriel's there fighting too.
Yeah, she takes a group of people from Numenor to fight with
Galadriel.
Galadriel.
Galadriel ever wear armor or go to Numenor or cavort with Muriel, who was born 1600 years after the forging of the Rings of Power? No. The answer is fucking no.
Well, Gary is on strong grounds with Numenor, because as far as we know, it is true that we don't know if Galadriel did see Muriel in Numenor. But, as always, you have to actually be careful and try to judge these things fairly. For instance, the use of the Palantir, which is probably going a little overboard, is fine. That wouldn't be out of place in terms of Numenor. But nevertheless, let's get at the more central question, namely, is it correct or is it violating the canon that Galadriel is wearing armor and or fighting orcs? Well, let's get to the first issue. Is Galadriel a fighter? And the answer is yes. If we go to the Unfinished Tales, we actually look at the writing. Tolkien tells us, yes, she is a warrior. She did fighting. Now, to be careful, he doesn't say she was armored, but could you make a reasonable inference that she would wear armor? And the answer is yes, because even when you're fighting orcs, it does help that you're armored. Galadriel being a warrior or destroying orcs is not much of a violation of the canon. It's unclear why fans think it's a violation of the canon. I'm really not sure at all. These are real quotes, and we have additional quotes where he talks about her Amazonian disposition. Now, to be careful, this isn't Wonder Woman. He's not trying to make a radical feminist myth about warrior women creating a matriarchy that will create a universal peace. So, this is his use of the Amazonian myths. But nevertheless, we can sort of put it together. She's athletic, she's strong, she does fighting. So the idea that she would never participate in warfare, or she would never get into a fight, or would never be physical or use swords, seems rather a stretch. Like, why would she not use these weapons? Or why would she not fight? Or why would she not hunt orcs? Again, even if those particular events did not happen, there's nothing unreasonable with creating a story with Galadriel with those elements. We have enough in the canon that seems like a reasonable judgment to do those things. So what is the problem? Well, I can understand someone who says, I saw Lord of the Rings, and to be even more generous, I read the books Lord of the Rings, which are actually canonical, and my idea of Galadriel is as this kind of ethereal, beautiful, wise, sagacious creature, which is fine. But again, I don't think they are reading or even watching very carefully, because even Peter Jackson had Galadriel with armor. She has a husband. People seem to have this image of elves who are so idealized with these amazing bodies, and yet simultaneously they also hold the proposition that apparently these elves, they don't have sex. Like Arwen and Aragorn, they have sex because he's a human. How he managed to have sex with the elf? I don't know, because apparently elves don't have sex, but Galadriel does have a husband. What do you think she and her husband do exactly? They just play chess? No, they do have sex. And this is canonical. Tolkien does talk about these things. Now granted, it's still a little silly, and I would say I would dispute him, but apparently they only have sex for some time and then they move on to other things, which I think is pretty silly, but that is what he wrote. Galadriel has sex. Galadriel fights. Now, did Galadriel fight with armor? Question mark. Did she show up in Numenor? Also question mark. But would it be reasonable to construct a story where she goes to Numenor in armor and perhaps fights orcs here and there? Maybe, maybe not. Certainly it wouldn't be radically contradicting the canon. Again, you can just see these passages for yourself. These things did happen. But you can raise certain questions. For instance, this happened in the later writings. Should we take this fully on board? Because the passages are very problematic and very controversial. And they do seem to present a different version of Galadriel than we would expect. That's true, but again, we need to harmonize these texts together. And cumulatively, Galadriel in armor, Galadriel fighting orcs, I don't see anything that's, quote, a canonical violation. I guess if you've only read a little bit of the lore, you could say it's a canonical violation, but then you would be a fan of that particular lore. So I can understand someone saying, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, and I don't like what they're doing with Amazon. But if you're a Tolkien fan, I don't see how you can say with Galadriel, at least yet, this is wrong, or this is bad, or this doesn't fit the character. How does this not fit the character? Why doesn't it fit the character? No explanation is given, it's just a lot of innuendo and rhetorical statements. And frankly, deceiving the audience. Which is fine if that's what Nerdrotic wants to do. If he just wants to build a life built on lies, and that's his business. But why are we bringing Galadriel into these debates? I have no idea. I have no idea at all. It just seems people who have this very strange and weird idea about Galadriel, and they're deceiving other people about that image, but does not match what we see in the books or what we read in the larger canon. So, not clear what we're talking about with Galadriel.